Welcome to the Zapata brand. And now, your host, George Zapata.
Welcome to the Zapata brand podcast. I am George Zapata. Today, very, very excited for a few reasons. Number one, I've known this man for a very long time. He is younger than me, a lot younger actually, but I've known him for a long time. I got his book. I saw it online. I saw he was doing some big things online. Got his book, reached out to him, and he was kind enough to meet me for lunch to start my journey. That is why I'm so indebted to him now. He started this journey that I had with me a long time ago, and now he's progressively moving on and leaving me in the dust. But I wanted to catch up with him before he takes off. So I'm not going to be able to tell everybody your accomplishments. I want you to start off, tell everybody your accomplishments. This is David Kitchen. Known him since he was a kid. Start and tell us where you came from. How I don't know you much as a kid.
Yeah.
I know you from when you came into high school. So start a little bit further back, just so I have an idea.
Yeah. So I tell people all the time, man, the best gift I was ever given. I was born in a single parent household, raised by my mom. Moved to Berwick at, I guess I was 10, 11 years old. So I was actually born in Harrisburg, PA. We moved up to Berwick when I was 10 or 11 years old. We joke in my house and say, most people become a man of the house at 18. I became a man of the house at 10 or 11. My brother's father struggled with addiction. I never met my biological father. And so that was kind of the background story. I say it, and then I always have to remind people, like, my life was not a late night A&E special. You know what I mean? So when you say I was raised by a single parent, we had addiction in the home, this, that, and the other, automatically people think like, oh, it was this, it should be an HBO story, it should be this, it should be that. And it wasn't. I mean, we saw some things and it was difficult and we had our challenges, but man, my mom is a rock star and you've met my mother,
Yep.
she's a savage. And so I don't think we knew as children kind of how bad it actually was.
Right.
I think I had a little bit more idea because I was a little older. But my younger brother definitely, I think my mom did a great job of kind of keeping that away. And even little things now that I remember and I look back on it, I'm like, oh, wow, we were for real poor. Like,
Yeah. And me going through the same situation you did, my father abandoned us also.
Right.
So similar situation, I always said it was like everybody was in the same boat. Just some people had different size boats.
Yeah, exactly, man.
So we didn't know it either. But, you look back and like, oh, boy, that wasn't good.
For sure. Yeah, look, I think about, we used to do the Salvation Army lunches, right? So they did the brown bag lunches for families that needed help during the summer when school wasn't around, so you couldn't get your free or reduced lunch. And so we used to pack the brown bags. My mom worked at a restaurant, and we'd go in and pack the brown bags. And we'd go down, and she'd be like, hey, make sure you grab one. And we thought it was like, oh, yeah, we get a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, wait. We were those kids.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't even click in my head. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and this was down in Harrisburg at the time.
This was actually in Tamaqua, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So we moved to Tamaqua with my brother's father. They were married until I was, like I said, about 10 years old. That's when things got a little hairy. His addiction, he really started to struggle with that. It kind of changed the dynamic in the household. He was a long-haul truck driver, so he'd be gone for weeks. And it kind of, when he would come back, it was like all hell would break loose. Like things would get real chaotic for a minute. And so I think that was kind of the beginning of the end. And then we were.
Do you still have contact with him?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, he kind of went his own way, and it's for the best, man. And it's one of those things, again, I tell people it was the best gift I was ever given. I got the opportunity to watch my mom watch my mom show me what strength looked like, and show me what grit looked like. Because she went from working 3 jobs as a waitress, a bartender, and she did like some home like babysitting basically. Now she's running one of the best Alzheimer's units in the state of Pennsylvania.
Right. Where's that out of?
That's in Weatherly, PA. It's called
Okay,
Heritage
yeah.
Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so she she climbed the mountain on her own, dude, and she never gave up, and so I learned early on that like giving up is just not an option. It's just not in our family. It's just not what we do.
And just two brothers. You had you and your brother. That's it.
Just us.
Okay,
two.
good.
Yep.
And no one else in your grandmother.
My grandmother's around. Yeah, my grandmother she was a rock star. But again, my mom had that pride, so she didn't want my grandmother to know how bad things really were. And so it was kind of like this unspoken thing until the age of 10, 11. And even to this day, my grandmother still doesn't know the extent of what was going on at the home aside when she wasn't there. Like, she would come and pick us up on the weekends, me and my brother, and take us out. She lived outside Berwick on the other side of Nescopec, and she'd take us out there, and it was like we got to be kids, and then we come back to this environment, and it's like I had to go from being a 10-year-old or 8-year-old, 9-year-old kid, whatever it was at the time, to now I'm back to being the man of the house. Now I'm babysitting my brother. I'm making sure things are taken care of in the home. Like, it was this weird.
This is actually very amazing. It's almost identical. How we lived. It just was almost identical. We did have 3. There was 3 in the house, but it was almost identical. We'd go to my grandmother lived with us and my mom didn't really let on as much. What are you going to do? Your husband leaves, nothing you could do. But we went to our uncle's house, and we thought that was the greatest thing. And we'd come back to reality, knowing, we don't have really much money to go to school. I mean, we didn't go on vacation.
Right.
And we wouldn't unless my uncle provided that vacation for us.
And there's that adjustment period, right? I don't know if you went through this. Like, I remember coming back, and it was like I had to switch this edge back on. You know what I'm saying? And no pun intended with the name of the business. But it was like you get back to town, grandma's gone, and it's like you kind of, there was like that weird transition time for me where I was like, all right, I got to grow back up now real quick.
Yeah.
Spend 6 days as an adult and then go back to being a kid this weekend.
Right. Yeah. So now when did you officially come to Berwick?
Fifth grade.
Fifth grade.
Yeah,
and
so
you went through which elementary school?
Nescopec.
Nescopec.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You lived out there. So you went through there up to the high school. Now, the first time I will tell, let's fast forward a little bit because I'll get into, we kind of covered that. And we'll get back into that. I'm going to go backwards. But what happened is I first heard of David Kitchen from Coach Campbell. Me and Coach would come in frequently. We would talk, sit there, and he's like, and it's ironic that what he said. He said, I really wish I had more leaders like a David Kitchen. Now, I did hear that you weren't chosen. You weren't chosen as captain, and purposely he said, "Hey, I didn't choose you for a specific reason."
Right.
But he always told me, "I wish I had more leaders like David Kitchen." That was the first time I ever heard your name. Obviously, I seen you coming in. You were with Sittler and Hoffman and East, but I never really knew who you were.
Right.
And then I saw you at a softball tournament. We were there, and then that's when I knew who you were.
Yep.
Fast forward, I'm looking at the books and it says, that's David Kitchen. I said, I know him, and in a point where you're like, holy shit, his picture's right here. He's got a book. He's got this. So, you're coming into high school. You're leaving. Let's say you're leaving high school now. Now you're going into a college environment. You already didn't have a dad, didn't have a father figure. Your mother's the rock of the family. You're leaving your brother's home with your mom. You're on your own, and you're on your own in a different environment. How'd that transition work?
Not well, dude. I did not handle it well at all, honestly. So kind of to back up just a touch, like, so when I was getting recruited, I tell people a lot, I was a good player on a great team. And so I got to ride some coattails, and I ended up getting hurt.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Get what you can.
Yeah. I lost some scholarship offers going into my senior year. And so I was really late on the recruiting trail. I really had no idea where I was going to go, what I was going to do. And I got the opportunity to go to Susquehanna, play there. But I just was not emotionally ready, man. I went in there and I had this ego about me of, I'm going to do things my way. And I'm going to continue to, live my life and be the guy that I am. And a lot of people didn't know, but growing up, I was a party animal too. So I was kind of walking both
So
lines.
you actually almost had a reset back to, okay, so I heard you were a leader going through. Also, now you get a whole reset going into your freshman year.
Absolutely, man. I was the opposite of a leader. And I've been fortunate now, like I've had lunch with my college coach, and I said to him, like, now that I've been a coach for all these years, I'm like, dude, why didn't you kick me off the team? Like, why did you keep me, man? I had a 2.1 GPA my freshman going.
That's not good.
After my freshman fall. No. I came in, and I remember him calling me into the office, and he's like, dude, do you like football? I'm like, I love football. He's like, you like school? I'm like, no. And he's like, well, you better get to class, dude. And they read the comments from my professor because we got progress reports. And one of the comments was, David Kitchen is like, what did you say? He called me an eclipse, right? You don't see him often, but every time you do, you don't forget it.
Oh my
And
God,
I
that
was
is a great line.
Man,
Not
like,
you don't want to be on the receiving end of that line, but it is a great line.
Yeah, he was a film professor. He was a film professor.
Well, there you go.
They did black and white movies. First class, I walked in. I said, I don't do black and white movies. I got up and walked out.
Oh boy, that probably didn't leave a good taste in his mouth.
No, I was a knucklehead, dude. I was young, and it was.
That probably has a lot to do with how you got grown up. It really does.
For sure.
Because your mom was doing everything so hard to get everybody taken care of, and then you feel like, oh man, I missed out on something, so I'm going to be this person.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you will see as it goes further that played a big part in it. But I'm convinced of that because I could see how it is with me.
No doubt.
And you're a child. I just as big of a knucklehead going through just a different area.
You have to learn the lessons. You have to. And I didn't get a chance. I shouldn't say I didn't get a chance, but I chose not to act out when I was young because I had those responsibilities.
Right.
And then when I got to college, I didn't have those responsibilities. And so it was my turn to be selfish. It was my turn to be arrogant. It was my turn to play the victim card, right? Because I didn't have time to be a victim growing up. So then when I got older, it was like, well, I never met my dad, so I'm going to act out. I'm going to party Wednesday through Saturday. I'm going to throw a punch and ask a question later. Like, I'm going to be this dude. And it was, a time in my growth that I look back on now, and I'm like, I made my mistakes. It is what it is, but I grew through it. And I think a lot of people kind of get stuck in it, and you get stuck in that mentality. And then 30, 40 years later, you're still blaming, whatever your life situations are. You're still mad about something that happened in 92, and it's 2023.
And it's funny, me being Puerto Rican, I've never played the victim card. And I mean, your dad obviously was African American, I would assume.
Yep.
You didn't play the victim card. You know what I mean? So there are barriers that could be broken by us.
For sure.
Getting the victim card, as you say, is actually a curse than more people think.
Yeah,
it is.
Absolutely, because it handicaps you, man. You learn like guys like me and you that have kind of been through what we've been through, grew up in the situations we grew up in. Like, you learn resiliency and grit at a young age, whereas other people have kind of an excuse or a crutch that might handicap them later in life, right? Like, you have to learn that stuff, and you learn how strong you can be. And I think that's the cool part. Like, one of the greatest blessings for me is, like, I grew up not being afraid of things. Like, I'm not afraid of failing. I'm not afraid of this. I'm not afraid of that. Because it's like, I've been there. I felt real fear. You know what I mean? And so...
Well, see, that's where I think we differ. I grew up scared of everything when I came here.
Really?
Yeah. I was scared of deer. I was scared in the sense of, I want to stay status quo. That's why it took me so long to reach out to you.
Right.
Because I can remember one of the first questions I asked you, and I got a great story. I said, what do you say to the people who are like, that's David Kitchen? Well, he in school, he was an asshole. Or he did, he ain't going to, I said, I couldn't handle that.
Right.
And it was just when I was in Vegas, I was on the Porterway podcast, and I just said what I thought was my prediction for the fight Saturday. And my kid looked at me and he's going, oh my God, because we were going live.
Yeah.
And the comments were unbelievable. And I don't, and at the time, if it was, 5 years ago before I met you, I don't think I could have handled that. I probably would have walked out. So you not being afraid, that is a very strong character. And it is a blessing for you to be able to block that out. It's taken me this long to actually film, have Rich come in, have Leo come in, have you come in, sit down with Bo, and actually do it and put it on film.
Right.
Because I was like, oh man, I'm gonna get. I've gotten better response than I have hate, which is good. I mean, I do have to color my beard and shit before I go on, but I'm like, oh, this isn't bad.
Right.
So let me go back because I keep interrupting here. So you go. When was the first time when you were in college where you said, okay, I got to turn the switch here. Something's got to happen.
Academically, I turned it around pretty quickly. So Coach Briggs, man, so first practice, he tells us we got 2 rules. Don't show up late. Don't wear your gloves on your helmet, right? So me and Lou Hampton show up 15 minutes late, first practice.
Oh, nice.
Gloves on the helmet, hanging, 15 minutes late. So at that point, he called our head coach, and he called Campbell and told him that we were acting a fool, basically. And Lou snapped. Lou went right back to Lou Hampton, put his head down, went to work. Never wanted to feel that way again. It took me a little bit longer, so it took about the first year to get my act back together. I ended up graduating with a 3.0, so it took time, but it was I grew up, and
But there wasn't a moment where you actually had that moment of saying, okay, I have to choose a path to make my life better, as opposed to being in the same circle. You know, yes, your mom's a rock star,
Yeah.
but you don't want that same circle.
Right.
You want to be better.
Yeah, it was when I got hurt, man. It was when I got hurt again. I blew my knee my sophomore year at Susquehanna again, so it would have been my second time or third time in 2 years. And so I got told, hey, and I went to the doctor for a medical routine checkup just to get cleared before spring ball. I'd already gone through the surgery, already did all the rehab, all that stuff. I was ready to go, dude. I was in the best shape of my life. I'm like, I'm locked in, I'm focused, I'm ready to take that next step. So that transition you're talking about was happening. And then I hit this roadblock of I went to the doctor down at Woodbine, and he came in and he said, we can't medically clear you, man. Like, your knee is shot. Like, we can't, if you blow this again, we can't fix it.
Did you
And
feel?
No.
Nope.
I felt great.
Okay.
I thought I was ready, man. And so, you know, like I said, I had gotten myself on this train of I was training, I was eating right, I was ready, I was a million miles an hour. And then all of a sudden, boom, football's gone. And it's like, well, now I don't have anything to kind of anchor me, right? And so,
Did you feel football was an anchor?
absolutely, 100%, 100%. It was the thing
With the
that kept me on the rails.
camaraderie?
Yeah, camaraderie. It gave me a purpose. It gave me an outlet. It gave me, you know, it was this beautiful thing that the more you work, the better you are. And I like that. Like, I like the fact that, like, if I come in once a day and train, I'm good. If I come in twice a day and train, I'm even better, right? And so I like that mentality. I just didn't apply it to academics. And you know, but once I got hurt, football was over. There was like I joke about it now, say it's a grieving period. You know, it took a couple months for me to get my feet back on the ground. And then once I did, man, I was a different person.
Right.
Because it was like, you don't have football anymore. So what are you going to do? You're just going to let your life pass you by? Like, you're just going to be that guy that his best moment was, you know, Friday night in high school? Like, that's going to be you. And having that conversation with myself was tough. And it took time, and it wasn't an overnight change, but it was, I locked in, I got my academics together. You know, I took advantage of the resources that Susquehanna gave me. As far as studying abroad, I got the opportunity to live in Europe for 6 months, you know, do a bunch of internships, do different things. Then I was like, okay, I can apply these same principles that I took in football, and I can apply them to whatever I want, right? So if I work hard, I can be good at sales. If I work hard, I can do these things. I can create opportunities for myself outside of the game, right? And so that was, I say that the period that I was away from football, so from my sophomore year, junior year of college until I graduated, I needed that to find myself before I got back into athletics, right? Before I got back into coaching. I don't think I would be the coach that I am now and that I was if I didn't have that time away from the game.
Okay, so now that was your sophomore year when it was over.
Yep.
What was your relationship like with your coach now when you come back?
He was great, man. He was great.
Did you latch on to him saying, "Hey, let me sit under your tree here"?
Not so
was it-
much.
okay.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to do my own thing, and he kind of kept keeping me close because I think he saw the possibility that I could spin off the rails. You know what I mean? Especially while I was still in school, so my junior and senior year, I think he saw the possibility that, like, if I needed the game more than the game needed me, you know what I'm saying? And so he kind of did a good job of keeping me close. Like, he was the driving force behind me going to Europe and studying abroad. You know, he came and talked to me, and he's like, "Kid, you got to go." And he kind of put it in the light of, I want you to go and be with the guys, because my teammates were going. There was like 6 of us that went overseas. And he's like, "I want you to go and make sure that they train," because he knew I was a weight room guy. He's like, "I want you to make sure that they do that." And I wasn't even on the team anymore. And so him doing that for me, you know, at the time I was like, all right, man, I'll go party in Europe for 6 months. Like, that sounds good. You know, but what I didn't realize was what he was doing was keeping me on the path.
So how was your experience there in Europe? Was it
Phenomenal.
was it different? Was
Absolutely. Yeah. It was a culture shock. You know, obviously when you first get over there, like, because there's not many big guys over there. And so when you put 6 college football players over there, like, we stuck out like a sore thumb. And so that was a big culture shock for us because you ain't hiding. You're not blending in. And then I think just a perspective, you know, like, coming back, you feel different when you come back was the biggest thing that I noticed. Like, I felt like I almost didn't fit in here because I was such a different person. Like, you mature so quickly because you're 21 years old. you're by yourself. You've been by yourself at college, but now you're in another continent. Like, you're somewhere where nobody knows you. You might not even speak the language. Like, a lot of weekends, we were in cities and countries where we didn't even speak the language. And so it's like, if something goes wrong, you got to figure it out yourself. And that maturity, I think I really needed. I really, really needed that. And all the while, I was working for a company called Husky Outdoors, it was called. And they were based in the Czech Republic. And they assigned us, basically, they paid for our room and board for us to work for them as an internship. And so me and Lou and a couple other guys, we worked for this company, and we had to go to Prague and present to their board and tell them, basically whether we thought they should extend their market into Canada or not. And me and Lou, and we were having a good time and enjoying ourselves. And then, like, the last week of it, man, we got really locked into this thing. We're like, yo, this is kind of cool. And so we got an opportunity to pitch to the CEO, and we ended up having a great relationship with that guy. He took us out to his mansion. We had a great night, took us to the wine cellar, like the whole deal. We got to hang out. And that was kind of for me, that was a maturity moment too, because it was like, oh, you put the work in and opportunities come, And so, yeah, great experience, man. I recommend it to anybody to go and get out there.
So now that wraps up your sophomore year, junior year, senior year. Now you're starting to turn into, let's say, I want to look at a career. Then was it the strength and conditioning, or was it the head coach?
No, I didn't want to coach, honestly. So when I was a junior and senior in college, I didn't want to coach, and I was just going to get into business. And so I graduated college with a business degree, and I started selling cloud solutions and IT to small and medium businesses. Yeah, man, it was nuts. I was driving around in a Jeep. I was making great money. It's phenomenal money.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was knocking on doors.
Was this locally?
It was in Reading. It was based out of Reading. Yeah.
All right.
So I did that for about a year, and Scott Dennis called me and said, hey, I got the job at Holy Redeemer. I'd like for you to come up and run the weight room if you can. I was like, yeah, I'll do that. That'd be cool. So I went up and started coaching the weight room, and I was like, this is sweet. And then he asked me to stay on for the season. I coached the season, and all of a sudden, like, even though I was making this great money at this job, I was cutting out of work early to go to practice. I was doing all this stuff, and I saw my attention start to get pulled. And I was like, all right, like, I think this is what I want to do. So the season wrapped up. We had our office Christmas party, and I remember looking around. I'm seeing all these dudes wearing Rolexes, and they drive nice cars and the whole deal. And they're making a bunch of money, and I'm looking at it, and I'm just like, none of these dudes are happy, like none of them. And I was like, I don't want to be that. Like, that's not what I want to do. And so I thought about it, and I was like, I love coaching. I want to be a coach. And so I didn't know how to get into strength and conditioning. I had no idea what that process looked like. I didn't have an education in it. And so I sat down and I wrote a letter to every school, every Division I school on the East Coast. And I just said, I'll quit my job and come work for you for free if you teach me how to be a strength coach. and I got an opportunity.
Where'd you get the opportunity?
Robert Morris University out in Pittsburgh. So I packed up my Jeep, moved out there. I found it was an old high school that they turned into one-bedroom apartments, and they only took cash for rent.
Oh.
Sweet. Yeah.
That's not too shady.
Yeah, not too shady at all. So I moved in there, and at night I would study for the CSCS exam, which is the exam you need to be a college strength coach. And during the day I would coach from 5:30 in the morning till about 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, and then I'd come home and study and wake up and do it all again.
Now, these stories here that you're telling are the reason why this podcast to me means a lot. Because you're willing to go to the lengths that you did to get the stuff that you want.
Yeah, you have to.
There's such a small percentage of people who do that. It is amazing that I can be around people who are of that small percentage.
Right.
To put the stuff in.
That.
No, but I'm saying that the people that you kind of gravitate to are the ones that you want to be like.
Right.
And if it's the 1%, a small percentage of people that don't, and take financial out of it, your drive and your willingness to do whatever it takes that's an incredible character trait to me, to say, wow, that guy will do what it takes.
Right.
If I'm going to war with someone, I'm taking David Kitchen with me because I know that's what he's going to do.
Yeah.
So continue on as you go there. You went to Pittsburgh after that, or is it just this is what I want to do? Isn't, but now you got to get paid.
No, it is what I wanted to do. Yeah, I fell more and more in love with it every day because it's exactly what you were just talking about. I got to be around other coaches that were in that 1%. Like, because now I'm around Division I guys, so it's like these dudes are here to win and they're here to be successful. And so all the things that I had done, all the habits that I had completely transitioned. And that 6 month, when I look back, that's probably one of the most pivotal times of my life, was those 5 or 6 months that I spent alone in a 1-bedroom apartment in Pittsburgh. All I did was work, study, and work out. That was it. But I was surrounded by other guys who were on this laser focused like trajectory, and so that helped me. And so I ran out of money, actually. Probably, I got there in April. I ran out of money in September, and I came back to work a football camp down in Bloomsburg just to make some money. I was like, I just need some walking around money, something to pay another month rent. And I met the head strength coach at the Bloomsburg camp, and he offered me an unpaid internship. So this was my second unpaid internship. I'm a year and a half out of college, 2 years out of college now, and I'm not making any money. And so I said, all right, yeah, I'll do it, and I can live at home. So I called my mom. I said, hey, I'm going to move back home. You know, I'm going to take this job at Bloomsburg. And she's like, what's it paying? I'm like, nothing. And so I did, man. And so I got in there, and you know, I went through the first season, and the assistant strength coach there quit. And so there was an opening. And so Bill came to me, Coach Perkins came to me and said, hey, would you be willing to step into this role? And I'm like, yeah, for sure, man. This is what I wanted, you know. Like, how much does it pay? And he's like, $3,000. And I'm like,
Nice.
Sweet. Okay.
It's
all
$3,000
right,
more than I'm making now.
Yeah. So I'm like, all right, this will work, you know. And so I started doing my research, and I'm like, okay, what does it take to be successful? Like, what are the credentials? What do the best strength coaches in the country have that I don't? What are the things that I need? One of them was a master's degree. So mind you, my undergrad was in business. So I applied to get my master's degree in exercise science, and I realized that they also have a sports psychology program. And so I'm like, hey, can I do 2 masters at the same time? Like, is that possible? And they were like, I mean, kinda, I guess. And I was like, sign me up. Let's do this. So I started taking master's programs in sports psych and exercise science. I'm working as the assistant strength coach, and I'm not making enough money. So I'm like, I need more money. So I went to the athletic director. I said, is there anything that I can do to make more money? And he's like, well, we need an equipment manager. And I'm like, well, what do I have to do? He's like, you have to do the laundry. You got to set up the field. You got to do all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm in. Sign me up. So I became the equipment manager, and they paid me $30,000 on top of my $3,000 stipend for coaching. So I was making $33,000, taking master's classes. I'm doing the laundry. I'm waking up at, you know, some days.
That was a master's class in Bloomsburg?
That was at Cal U, so it's now Penn West out near Pittsburgh. So
Oh,
I was
my
taking
God.
them online.
Oh, online. Okay, I thought you were traveling.
So, no.
Jesus.
So I'm taking them online, man. So I'd be driving, and they were like Zoom classes.
Yeah.
So and it was before Zoom. It was just like virtual. I don't know what even called it back then. I'd have my phone on my dashboard, and I'd be driving, and I'm in class, and I'm like,
Jesus.
yeah, it was nuts, man. It was
The
nuts.
shit you do just to, you know what I mean?
Hey.
To get ahead.
You have to.
You know, it's an amazing thing. I can remember a story where my mother, I could remember she smoked. She smoked for years, you know, and I can remember going into the mall, and she had no money. She would take the cigarette butts and just smoke a little bit because you don't have no money to get cigarettes.
Yeah.
So it's the little things to survive. You don't realize, you know, and that was all just because she just wanted another month to stay in the house that we had. And it's tough, but those are the stories that make you better and a better person. Absolutely. And I think people, you know, I say I'm scared of stuff, but I think I'm not scared of saying, okay, I'm going to do this and see if I fail, I'm okay with.
Right, because it's at your hand.
You know.
Like I'm okay with failing. Even now with the business, I'm good with failing if I'm in the driver's seat. I don't want to fail because of somebody else. And so now it's like that's where the transition happens. You know what I mean? There's a difference there. And so I think that's more kind of like, just from what I've known about you, like that's the vibe I get from you is like, you know, you'd rather go down in the ring by yourself, right? Like I'd rather figure it out,
Right,
rather than like not take the fight.
Yeah, I think,
You know?
I mean, it depends on the person.
Yeah, I
At
guess.
my age right now, I'm going to hold off a little bit.
fair
I'm going to
enough.
pick and choose.
Fair enough.
But so now when you're there, when did you really decide, okay, I'm in now, I'm invested in this now, I'm going to make the leap to saying, now let's fast forward a little bit to you get your degree, your master's degree, double master's, right? When do you make that decision to say, I can do this? And you're not essentially what I call a mark, meaning like you're looking at these people being like, oh, I want to be like you. I want to be like, when are you like, I've arrived, I deserve the shot?
I'm here. So it's funny because it was almost like it happened, and then I realized how quickly I wasn't actually there. Right. So my second year at Bloomsburg, they opened up a director of strength and conditioning position, which was I would be over everybody. So the guy that was my boss, Bill Perkins, I would now be his boss, and now I would oversee training for the whole university. And so when I took that, I forget who sent it to me. One of the administrative people in the university sent me an article and was like, "Hey, congratulations, you're the youngest head strength coach in the country. They just did the data, and you're the youngest guy in the country to have your title." And I was like, "I made it. I'm here, dude. This is sweet, you know." And then about 6 months into it, I was like, "I don't know anything. I should not be in this job, you know." And so I ended up reaching out to a friend of mine, and I said, "Hey, I need an assistant job." And he's like, "Dude, you just got your first head job. You're the youngest guy in the country to have this job. Like, you really want to do that right now?" And I'm like, "I got to go learn. I'm not ready. I'm going to mess this up, you know?" And so I got the opportunity to go out to UNLV in Las Vegas. And I accepted the job on a Wednesday. I said, "When do you need me?" And they said, "Can you be here Friday?" And I was like, "Well, it's a 2-day drive, so probably not. Like, I probably can't do that." And they're like, no, you don't understand. We're offering you the job. We're going to connect you with our travel agent. We need you here Friday. And I'm like, "Okay, so what do I do?" And they're like, "Pack a duffel bag and then hire somebody to pack all your stuff into your Jeep, and we'll send a tractor trailer for your Jeep."
Wow.
And I'm like, "Okay." So I got on a plane, flew to Vegas, and that was the moment. That was one of the most scared I've ever been in my whole life, was getting on that plane. And I remember looking at my mom, and I was hugging her in the airport before I left, and I was just like, "Holy shit, like, what am I doing?" You know? And then I went to the bathroom, and I was like, all the thoughts that you have, like, what if I'm not good enough?
Yeah.
Like, all these things, like, what if I do this and I fail? Everybody's going to make fun of me. I just walked away from this, like, you know? And then I got on the plane, and I flew to Vegas, and again, one of the best things I've ever done for myself, you know?
And and also one of the things I like to parallel life and boxing, same way. Every fight before the fight, it doesn't matter how prepared you are, those thoughts always go in your head.
Dude, always.
There's like, "Oh man, did I do that extra run that I should have done? Maybe I'm not. Maybe this guy hits harder than I think." But when I actually step in the ring, you're like, "All right, I'm good."
Yeah. Well, did you ever see that video of Mike Tyson crying? Like, he was literally, like, crying before he went out.
Yes.
And
It was in Nationals.
Yeah, his
Nationals.
trainer's like, "Dude, what are you doing? Like, you've done this a million times." And he's like, "I'm not good enough. I'm not ready."
Yeah.
You know, and
It was Teddy Atlas.
yeah,
is what I'm-
yeah. And I think, you know, that those moments don't go away in life, man. I mean, even now, doing what I'm doing, you know, I had a 10-year career in college coaching. I've coached at, you know, USC against USC on opening weekend, Ohio State on opening weekend, in the Horseshoe. Like, I've done it, and I've lost on the biggest stages. And even now, when I go into a boardroom and I'm presenting to CEOs, or I'm talking to CEOs, or I'm presenting to a keynote room, and there's people in there, before I go on stage, dude, I'm having those thoughts.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, man, like, what if I blow this? Like, what if there's always that feeling, you know? But I saw a quote not too long ago. It was a guy talking. He said, you know, that your life comes down to the sum of the choices that you make with shaky hands. Like, the things that you do when your hands are shaking and you're sweating, like, that's what your life comes down to. And so I try and adopt that, you know, and I try and remind myself, it's something I say to myself all the time, everything you want is on the other side of fear. Every single thing that you want in life is on the other side of this feeling that you have right now. If you can just sit in this discomfort long enough to go through it, you're going to be so happy you did it.
Yeah. It's something we say to our fighters all the time, Rich, Leo, me. You have to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations.
Yeah.
It is hot in that ring. When that guy's punching on you, you don't know, you can't hear, you can't see because you got the ringing in your ear. You're uncomfortable. It's very easy to say, "I'm out." You know, I tore my quad in the first round against Sean McFadden, and I seriously had that thought in my head, "Man, I got to stop. This is bad." But I didn't. And thank God I didn't. But, you know, those thoughts that you overcome, which is a tremendous amount of years and years and years and years of failing, and then coming through it, that makes you stronger. It makes you better. It makes you more comfortable in those situations.
Because every time you do it, it's further evidence, right? It's further evidence that you are who you think you are.
Right.
Like, there's this line between confidence and arrogance, right? And it's being able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, "I'm a bad dude, Not because I think I'm a bad dude, but because the evidence behind me tells me I'm a bad dude. Now, is there somebody out there that's badder than me? 100%. 100%. But it doesn't make me less of a bad dude, right? So it's like, I look at that as for every decision that I made that scared the hell out of me, and every decision that I've made that made me nervous and made me wonder and all those things, like every time I do that, that's now a highlight reel that I can have in my head. So when I'm nervous and when I'm getting ready to go on stage, like I'm thinking back to that stuff, and I'm like, no, dude, look at all the things you've done. You know, you're good, and let's go do it. You know, and it's something that I think people expect it to go away. You know, you expect to, like, one day you're just gonna wake up and like you're comfortable.
Yeah, and I mean, it's weird because like you walk around and a small town, it's a little different where everybody knows you,
Right?
Everybody knows you, and you're like, wow, it's you get to a point where like, wow, you don't realize how much effect you have on them.
Right.
You're just thinking that they're hating on you or whatever, and they're not. They're actually not. Most people aren't. Most people, and the ones that do, they're taking the time out of their day to hate on you.
Yeah. Listen, that's why you're broke. Like that's what I think to myself. Like if you're gonna hate on me, it's a reflection of how you feel about you, and it's the reason that you won't ever get the dreams that you want.
I know and that's a great concept, because you know how many people that just, and sometimes it's hard because it's some people that are close to you family wise that'll hate on either whether it's you or someone else in your family. You're like, you're not going nowhere. I mean, like, why are you hating on them? Give them the hand that they need. Give them the jump start of their car that they need to go to where they want to go.
But it's a reflection, and people, you got to remember, like, people like pattern recognition. Like, people enjoy things staying the same. And so when they see somebody, especially somebody in your family or somebody you've been close to a long time, that's why the hate sometimes comes from within the group, because they're like, oh, wait, you're changing. So that means that if I'm not changing, that means I'm getting left behind. And so that's uncomfortable for me. So I'd rather grab your leg while you're trying to climb the mountain and pull you back down, because then I don't have to feel the pressure to change.
Yep.
Right? Because I see the discomfort that you're going through.
Right.
I see that. And, like, most of my friends, I'm blessed. Most of my friends grew with me as I grew. But there were definitely some that I look back on and I'm like, oh, you were for real trying to keep me back where I was. You liked that version of me better than you like the version of this. But the reason wasn't because you didn't want me to be great. It was because you saw the discipline that I was putting myself through in order to achieve the things I was achieving, and you didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Right? So it wasn't so much about, like, you didn't want me to be successful. It was just you didn't want to feel what I was feeling.
Right. And that's not fair to you. I mean, you love them. You got to love them from a distance, but you're like, man, I can't be here.
Yeah.
And I just finished a podcast up about that. You can't be around that negativity. It takes too much of a toll mentally, physically, spiritually out of you. You cannot grow. Right. It forces you to stay there or where you're at. Hey, everybody, that was part 1 of our 2-part series with David Kitchen. If you wanted to, you could click right on through to part number 2. If not, just watch it later. It's a great interview. Thank you.